I do a podcast for a living, so I can be in front of a mic a little bit. First off, I want to say thank you to everybody who's a part of this group, who is supportive of this group and supportive of this community, as I have reaped the benefits and got to meet some of the best people that I've ever met in my life, my wife, these people around me. I wouldn't be anywhere I would be today, which is not that far, but I wouldn't be even close. So this community is something that I've never experienced. I came from Wyoming, Mark, a little bit better than Montana, but we had a community that the economy crashed, drugs set in, not a lot of great things going on around there. Here, it's a completely different story. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for allowing me to talk you to sleep. First off, Mark talked about this time of transition, and in all of our lives, this COVID thing, these elections, everything that's going on, it's a very deep transition in all of our personal lives. And so originally my lineage comes back from what would be a northern Germanic tribe. They would speak Swedish. And so here up on the screen, I have transitioned life, overgang I levete, okay? Pardon, I'm not very good. The lineage is very long and deep. So in these different times of transition, I've kind of had to reflect on what got me to today. And it started with a lot of different people. It wasn't just myself. And so let me get this here. There we go. So who am I? And it's not very exciting, but early on, and I talk about my lineage, this Germanic tribe called the Lombards, okay? The Longbeards or the Longobardos or the Lombards. And these were a people of change. These were a people that were originally the Vikings that you would say. And so early on, 568 AD, they came down from Germany. They came down and conquered everything as the weakened Roman Empire was still standing, but very weak. They came down, and the best word was savagery, okay? They came down and just took out everything they could and began this new change, this new kingdom that they had built. In 605 AD, a truce was made between the Roman Empire and the Longobardos or the Lombards, and it was a big time of change as things really started to transpire as the time went on. And so I bring that up because every one of our lineages could go back to some type of change, okay? And so my story, originally from Worland, Wyoming, small town in the Bighorn Basin, great little place. Again, the economy crashed and things just weren't as great as they needed to be. From there, I came up to Dickinson. I came here for an education, and I played football for the Blue Hawks. This thing keeps on cutting out pretty bad, doesn't it? I played football. I had some decent success early on with the football team from 2012 to 2017. And then from there, I got to the very first transition, going from college into what is now this working life. And a lot of what's going on now, colleges, I wouldn't say it's not a failing thing, but it's getting harder and harder to set kids up to where we want to be with this ever-changing economy that we have. And so from there, I began to go out into the community. I started at the rec center. I went from the rec center to Elite PT. I went from Elite PT to Bell Chiropractic. Brian Bell, one of the best guys I've ever met. And then from there, I knew that there was something else that I wanted to do, something that I could make a little bit bigger change than the 625 square foot gym that I was training in. So from there, I'm going to go over 3 different transitions in my life that hopefully we can give you guys some help. And again, who am I, this 25 to 30-year-old guy, to come up here and say this? I have a very weird but unique story. Okay, so the first one is a transition of identity, a transition from Brotherhood into this working class. The second one, which may come to a little bit of a surprise, the second one is overcoming drug abuse. Okay, and then the third is into business, running business as I would like and as I do now. So first and foremost, the transition of Brotherhood. You hear military talk about it, you hear football, any type of collegiate sports talk about it, and it's this relationship forged in fire. And some fires burn hotter than others. 2013, we were still in the Frontier Conference with the DSU football team, and we won one game because everybody beats Jamestown, okay? Everybody beats Jamestown. That's just how it goes. And so I had these questions. People ask me these questions like, are you thinking about transferring? Like, let's go get some W's. And it was a weird situation for me because that thought never came through my head. It never came through my head that, like, let's jump ship and let's go. We had Coach Bijou, who is this legend, this very morally just guy, very great guy, at the helm, and I got to have the experience and the honor of playing underneath him. And then as Coach Stanton took over the helm, and we're at where we're at today, very, very successful. So there's this special bond that you get. You hear about it in any type of MOS in the military, or you hear about it in any type of special forces. This forged brotherhood. I had played football for 12 to 13 years of my life, and I identified as Colby the football player. Okay, and so this was a very different time, and you hear about this, the transition out of military and sports. You hear about the struggle, and it was a bigger struggle than I've ever had to deal with at that point. Things get better, I promise. And so from there, I had what would be probably my first feeling of anxiety, anxiousness, and I feel like that is very deep within not knowing what you need to do, not knowing what you want to do, and being uncomfortable in the unknown. And my sister would say this prayer to me, and it always started with being comfortable in the unknown, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. So transition from there into what is now business and all this stuff, but throughout that came these injuries. Okay, throughout my very first surgery was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school. I had a full rotator cuff and labrum tear. Nothing big deal there. I come back and I start the next year. Well, then every single year of college, I had a shoulder surgery and then a knee surgery, come back, restart, and try to play again. All 4 years, I was able to come back and play and start and have fun and get to be with these guys. But it's a physical means, it's a physical state, but it's a very mental game coming back, starting from complete zero. I heard you talking about having a surgery. It's not the most, it's not the funnest thing to do. It's hard to start over whether you're in sports or the working class. It's not something that we want to do. And so I go through this physical and mental strenuous process, but this was the first surgery was in 2008. And at that time, it was what's considered the Wild West of the pain medication epidemic. And I'm supposed to be like this strong, tough guy that like lifts weights all the time. I get emotional about this one, but it was a hard time because you're this athlete, you're this halfway successful athlete, and these doctors, and it's not just the doctors, but these people want to see you succeed. And at that time, there was some research out about these long-standing effects, but at this time it was, what do you need to keep going? What do you need to keep on playing? And so that was OxyContin, that was Percocet, that was all these different types of things that now, as we know now, are a lot worse than we intended. And so from these surgeries, that's kind of where this second transition started, as we transition into quite possibly, positively, the hardest transition of my life. And so we get into this double life that I was very, very good at living, okay? This picture was 6 years ago. The last picture, this is the first picture of my sobriety 6 years ago. And it was a long-standing road, and it's never easy, but it's definitely worth it. And so my addiction story started with these surgeries. It started with this means to an end. Take this, and things will get better. And then I found out later down the road that it was much, much deeper than that. And it took a very negative turn. And so it started with my childhood. Very, very abusive, violent childhood that I've now forgiven, but I had to look at to know where this was coming from, to know where this chasing of this thing was coming from. And so right off the bat, sophomore year of high school, I'm playing sports, I'm a 3.9 GPA, and I'm getting absolutely obliterated on pain medication daily, multiple times a day. And it was living this double life that gave me this little sense of excitement, okay? This excitement that I can have this standard, I can be looked at as this while doing this. And it was a very negative portion of my life, but it taught me a ton. And so from there, I had this intuition. I said, all right, I need to kick this. I need to stop this. And so I went to a family member who was a police officer. And I said, hey, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And right at that point, it was just pain medications. I said, I need to stop this. I'm going to play college football. I need to be straight. And so at that point, I just said, I need to stop cuz. I need to stop X. Okay? I didn't realize why I was chasing at this point. So for 365 days, I had a pea cup at my front doorstep. Right when I got off of football practice, bang, bada boom, ready to go, okay? Completely fine for an entire year. I come to Dickinson and trouble finds you if you're looking for trouble. And so great freshman, sophomore year, and then things start to progress very negatively. Very, very negatively. And I was trying to live this double life again. And I tell this story, and I'll cut out quite a bit. I mean, multiple overdoses, multiple runs in with police officers, multiple things that I never thought a human should do. Looking at those people, that's not what I do. Those people that have those issues it's not me. Well, I finally again came to this intuition that there's something more, that I needed to stop this. And so I got to the point where I was sitting down, I was playing college football at the time, and I was having great success. I led the conference in sacks. I did all these things that this is what they think, but I'm down here. And so I came to this realization, and the first person I called was Coach Stanton. And the second person I called was my mother. And the first call I made was to Coach Stanton. I said, hey, things have progressed. It's not just pain medications. It's the worst opiates you can think of. It's the heroin. It's the things that you never thought as a kid you would ever do. So I called Coach Stanton, and he pulled me into his office, and I told him what was going on. And the first thing he said to me was, Colby, you're a good kid. This is going to work out. This will work out. Long story short, I served a 2-game suspension, but at this small college at Dickinson State University, I want to show what you guys have done, what the college has done, what the community as a whole has done. At any other university, I go tell my head coach that I'm going to have a drug test, and I'm going to serve a suspension, and I'll probably lose my starting spot, right? Coach Stanton goes with me to the ER for 3.5 hours as I'm withdrawing off of the worst stuff you could ever think of. As I'm going through these very big life events, and he's there with me, the head coach of this football team. And so when I say I hold people highly in my life, I mean that. He's one of good, bad, or indifferent. He's somebody that I will always respect in my entire life. And so from there, I went to treatment. I served my 2-game suspension, and from that day, it's a completely different life. And this is where we get into a little bit more happy, giddy stuff, okay? From that point, it's been over 6 years now, and I completely progressed from that point, and I found exactly what the why was behind what I was doing. And I found it was a lack of love. Everybody needs this love, okay? And if you don't have this at the very basis, at the very cellular level of what you're doing, you're going to chase it in other aspects, no matter what it is. If it's food, if it's drugs, if it's alcohol, you will chase it to some extent. And so I found out, I said, man, I was never truly loved. I was looking for this compassion that I could never truly get. And so I finally addressed that in my life, and magically it was taken away from me. When I tell you guys that this was my life, it was wake up, do this, wake up, do this, and it was magically taken away just like that. So when you get to your why, and I'm going to talk about that on the last slide, is getting to your why. It's more powerful than just a motivational quote. It's very, very powerful. And so from there, I was able to go to treatment at the one and only Pulver Hall up at the college, and it wasn't the treatment. It's not the 12 steps. It's not these things that fix you. It has to be a mental mindset and this lifting of this addiction from you. And so I talk about running a business. So I'm going to be giving a very similar speech in Texas here in a month or two. And I talk about running a business like an addict. Okay? What's these things that you can learn? What's these things that you can take from this very inherently negative position and twist it to very positively? And the very first thing is being authentic. Absolutely, positively, the most important thing is being authentic. When I was authentic to Coach Stanton, he trusted me. He allowed me to have a second chance. If I would have lied and hid and done these things, it wouldn't have worked out the way it did. And then everything comes full circle, and it's pretty amazing to see and feel. I played for him. I went through this rehab process, and then I ended up getting hired for 2 full years being the strength and conditioning coach at the university. That was my dream. Like, that's the end goal. That was the end goal for me at that point. So it held a very big position in my heart. And so being from that addict, now I was looked at as this coach, this leader, this somebody that was supposed to give advice. And it was a very cool transition to see that. I never thought that time was coming. I was living for the day, okay? And that's what we talk about here. Use all the time or none. And in business, in life, in marriage, in relationships, whatever it is, we can learn this skill from addicts such as myself. We can use all the time that we have for that specific project, the specific business, your marriage. And so when an addict, they're probably one of the best examples of being very present when they have what they want. If you think about that, they're fighting for this perfect moment, this moment of euphoria, warm feeling, this love, and they find it in this one thing, and they're very good at staying in that moment, and they will chase that moment for the rest of their life. And so if we can use that in business, in marriage, in whatever it is, if we can completely enjoy that moment. I struggle with it myself. Social media is a massive, massive thing in my life and my business, and that's what I really have to struggle with to unplug. So if we can use that every single moment for the better, it's going to pay off in the end. And then doing the uncomfortable work. And we all, no matter if you really love your job, your business, your career, there's always a few different aspects that you don't like. There's hard spots. If it's HR, if it's billing, if it's invoicing, if it's scheduling, whatever that is, we know that we don't enjoy that. But if we can rewire our brains to this delayed gratification mindset, we can really pay off in the end. So doing the uncomfortable work to get to this process. And we've always heard that cliche saying, like, it's not about the end goal, it's about the process. I believe that to be true. I believe that to be true, that it is this process, that it's the every single day uncomfortable work that we have to do to get us to the end goal. And then lastly, I'm sure most people, if you're an educator, you've seen this video, but it's Start With Your Why by Simon Sinek. Absolutely one of the most popular TED Talks there is. And he talks about starting with your why. And he's talking about Apple starting with their why in their marketing, and how that them starting with their why has completely catapulted them. And so I start that with my very first rehab was just to do it. The second rehab, because I knew the why, I knew what I was chasing. So fulfill that and quit chasing it. It's a lot simpler speaking in a microphone than those 6 years were. And so if we can really focus on that why, and then that gets to my last point of nobody cares that I'm a teacher, or nobody cares that I work in the oil field, or nobody cares that I own a gym just because I own a gym. They care about the why behind it. And so my whole philosophy when I train athletes, and I didn't get to that, I'm the owner of the Iron Chapel here in town. I wonder who took that picture. But I've been very blessed to be able to have my own gym and get to work with the college athletes. But my why behind it is not that I just train athletes cause, or I want to make an impact. Like, we have to get deeper than that. We really have to get deeper than that. And my thing is my family was middle class. My family didn't have the money. I was told, you better get a heck of a lot better at football because we're not paying for your college. And so my whole aspect of that is if I can teach these athletes to be a better athlete through strength and conditioning, if I can lend them these further opportunities down the road that they can possibly go to college and get their school paid for, their parents don't have to pay for it now, and then they get embedded in the community, such as Dickinson, and then they get to work at their dream job or open their business. That's why I train athletes. Like, that's the reason why I train athletes. I don't train them just to get strong and big and look good. And so getting down to the nitty gritty, the basis of why you do things is hands down the most important thing that I've done. And so these lessons that we can learn from a 10 to 12 years of addiction in my life, be authentic no matter what you're doing. Absolutely everything. In this community, I haven't run into a massive amount of unauthentic people. Okay? I mean, it's this community that we're very lucky, and all of us know that. We all know that we're very lucky here. Use all time or none, just like an addict would in business, life, and marriage. Be very present and do the uncomfortable work. And lastly, start with your why. And so that is my spiel, guys. I do have just a contact page. I have my gym downtown. I also run my own podcast. It's on Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff. And so I appreciate you guys letting me rabble on here. I hope I didn't go too long, but I appreciate you guys very, very much. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Colby? Right here.
Yes.
Colby, how long have you had Iron Chapel, and have you built the business to where you want it to be with numbers of clients and things?
Yep. So January will be just over 2 years. So it was a very, very weird time to be 26 years old, owning your own business when COVID happened, being open for less than 6 months. Very weird time, let's just say that. And it's got to the point where we've now hired a few trainers. We have a good pipeline of like college kids that come help us train. Right now we're in our summer program, and it's probably busier than what we want it to be on right now. Come out of summer, we would like to, actually our lease is up. We're in the old Colligan Water building, just east of the post office. And we would like to get a bigger spot after that. But we're doing great now. Prior to, it was just a very weird time to be a young kid opening your gym. So, thank you.
Anyone else?
So what's the podcast about, and what was the transition into podcasting?
Yeah, obviously you guys can tell I like to talk and I don't shut up. And so podcasting is a great realm for that. I started listening to a lot of podcasts probably right when I got to college, 2012, 2013. And I just like the long form discussion of it. And like one of the best examples of it was, instead of having our presidential debates, why don't we have these two candidates sit in a podcast room with Joe Rogan or whoever it is and actually long form our discussions? We're getting a lot further on. And so mine was to bring the best, because in strength and conditioning there's this very weird narrative that you need to work yourself to the bone and then you can have this respect, to where you have to do the 4 a.m. session and the 8 p.m. session. And I think you do have to cut your teeth to some extent. But I wanted to bring the best of, I'm also a day and swing trader and investor, so I wanted to bring the best in business, investing, adventure, health, strength and conditioning to the strength coach, to the business owner. And so that was kind of the niche that I was attempting to, or am attempting to fill. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, investing, business, marriage, I talk about, this is where I first talked about my addiction journey. And so just being authentic on that was kind of my whole deal.